Thanks, sir.
Yep.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. I call to order the meeting of the Manassas Park Governing Body for Tuesday, March 7th, 2023. First, we have approval of the amended agenda. The amended portion of it is we are adding 9D under new business, resolution of support for a congressional earmark for stream restoration. Are there any other changes? And City Attorney, we have a closed session, is that correct?
Yes, Mayor, we have a closed session with two items, both of them are consulting about a new business to the city, one of which also includes legal advice and the potential sale of publicly owned real estate.
Okay,
Or actually, both of them do that for that.
thank you. Do we have a motion to approve?
So move.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you. Please join us in a moment of silence, and Councilmember Hampton, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moving on to public comment time. We have some folks signed up to make public comment. When you come to the microphone, please speak directly into the microphone and state your name, your address, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. City Attorney will be our timer. The first is Mr. Tyler Regula. Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, so I am Tyler Regula, live at 281 Mosby Drive. My wife and I are fairly new to Manassas Park, so thank you for the opportunity to come up here and speak. I have a couple topics I'd like to go over. First one, diving right into it, is going to be our upcoming commercial vehicle parking issues. With the new code changes in section 2451, I've gotten multiple amounts of feedback about this from community members, and I just want to share that here. First off, I feel from the feedback I've gotten is a lot of these community members do not know about this. They don't know what's happening, and it's coming up. My fear is we get to a point where we say, hey, we have a grace period, this and that, but it's still going to cost a lot of time for all these community members to make arrangements. I think we need to be a little more proactive rather than reactive, and I just want to make sure that doesn't slip through the cracks because it's going to affect a lot of people here. Moving into my second topic, which is driveway blocking. Currently, Manassas Park City Code does not have a specific distance clause to address hazardous conditions being created due to vehicles being parked too close to people's driveways. And the issue is also an ingress and egress issue. I know with the commercial vehicle changes we're having, people will be parking their trailers maybe in their driveways, and people parking too close to said driveways you can't pull out with a trailer. It's a bottleneck, it's a hazard. Code 2448, General Prohibitions, subsection 9, specifies a distance for firehouses of 15 feet. This allows a safe distance for emergency vehicles to come and go from the firehouse. However, I'd like to propose a recommended change to 2448, subsection 1, to specify a distance requirement for residential driveways to either match or exceed the same call out as even our neighboring city of Manassas. Their section 114.441 does have a specific amount of footage. Again, this will allow us to leave our home safely, not get hit trying to just go to work, commute. Very small ask, and hopefully it's something we can consider.
Okay.
Next up, I have sanitary issues. Again, community feedback. We have issues and numerous pain points in the community regarding trash pickup services, basically leaving debris, falls out of the truck, no one's picking it up. Another one is these conditions are also leading to apparently rats around the community. I haven't seen any personally, but it's been brought up on several different occasions. And then also there was mention of a street cleaning vehicle that used to go around and clean the streets. Again, I'm fairly new here. I don't know what was pre-existing, but if that's an option we can look at again, that'd be great.
Sir, you're about 3 seconds left.
Okay, I'll stop there then. That's good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Our next speaker is Stephanie Perrier.
Yeah, sorry, I crossed her out.
Okay, I just want to make sure that, okay, thank you, ma'am. Maren Lee Gadakowski? I apologize if I didn't pronounce your name correctly.
Not a problem. It's a complicated one. My name is Marinka Gadzikowski, and I live at 127 Scott Drive. I've been a resident of Manassas Park since 2009, and I have two major concerns that I would like to raise to the council today. The first being the issue of speeding. Approximately a year ago, we were surveyed, I don't know how many of my neighbors were surveyed, about a proposed change to the traffic direction, so it would flow in the opposite direction on Scott Drive. This was apparently intended to kind of curb treating Scott Drive as a pass-through. Anecdata, right, I'm a data scientist, but anecdotally, when I sit on my front porch, at least 40% of the cars that go down my street are exceeding the speed limit, which is 15. One issue may be that people do not see the sign. It is rather small, and it's also currently on the passenger side of the street. There's a lot of kind of clutter, et cetera, signs, trees there, and so they may not see it. Recently, the corner house on Scott and Manassas had a collision with a car, or I should say a car collided with the house. So that seems to indicate to me that we have some kind of speeding issue. There are approximately 9 children ages 10 and under that live between the intersection of Manassas and Scott Drive and the end where Scott intersects with Cabell. I would hate to see something happen to one of those children because someone was going entirely too fast down my street, and they're fairly young, and so they may play outside and all of that. The second issue I would like to raise is basically the trash issue that my neighbor, well, several streets away, raised. I'm concerned about the increasing level of litter that I see around the park. I've done a little bit of digging through the literature out there, and one of the #1 predictors of people littering or not upkeeping their property is existing trash. And so I would just like to ask that perhaps the council consider some kind of attention to the historic side of Manassas. The street cleaner's been mentioned, some effort to just pick it up. Maybe if it looks nicer, more people will also want to kind of self-police themselves. I'm very fortunate. My immediate neighbors are great about picking up after themselves, but I'm a dog walker. Well, I walk my own dogs, that is to say. And so I get a chance to see a lot of the streets on the historic side, and many of them have a significant littering problem, to include the other side of Scott Drive between Manassas Drive and where the power plant, or the generator, whatever you want to call that, path goes. So those are my issues. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, next we have Mr. Mike Smith.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the governing body. I think my topics have already been covered for the evening, but just to reiterate a little bit, I would hope to address the issues of garbage, parking, and speeding. Regarding the garbage, it feels like nearly every day I see broken pieces of furniture or trash cans overflowing onto the street. We've seen rats overflowing garbage cans and the stray cats chasing them. My wife and I joke about this a lot, but we try to keep the cats around because we'd rather have cats than rats. I brought along a few photos of some of the trash that we've seen. Regarding parking and driveway blocking, as was already addressed as well, we have a large number of commercial vans and cars that block our driveway and obscure the road. It's a safety hazard when you can't see in either direction pulling out of your driveway, or you can't get out because a vehicle is blocking it. I'll give you guys some photos of that as well. And last topic, also already addressed, was the issue of speeding. Much has been said already. I would like to hear some numbers from the police, if we can get any metrics on that. Has it gotten worse? Has it gotten better? We've seen several closures of the main road through town. When Manassas Drive is closed, it impacts our entire community. And the house being hit and the utility pole being knocked down as well have been, pretty serious issues. So I don't know what can be done to address the traffic issues in our community. I realize a red light at every intersection isn't feasible, but if we could get some results from a traffic survey or hear some other feedback from the governing body, what else is being done or can be done to improve these safety situations. I know you have a lot on your plate, so I wanted to end on a lighter note. Several of my friends have mentioned seeing the parking enforcement vehicle out on the street this week, and thank you all for getting that back out there. Good job.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you. Is there anyone else who is not signed up but who would still like to make public comment? Okay, then we will move on. I can assure you folks, thank you so much for coming out tonight, and I can assure you that staff has heard everything that you've said, and we're working on everything that you've been talking about. So thank you. Thank
Do
you.
you want me to address some of these?
Yes.
Yes?
I think the parking would be good.
I beg your pardon?
An update, an explanation behind why we did the ban on commercial parking would probably be a good, if you could do it briefly, as well as an update
Absolutely.
on
Oh,
that.
an explanation on why
Yes.
we did the law. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I can go over that too, but can I hit the points first that the residents raised? Okay, so driveway spaces, we can look at that proposal and see what Manassas does. You said that they have the law, so we'll take a look at that. The trash from the trash truck when they pick it up, right? We've heard those complaints. The street sweeper is something that our Public Works does utilize. Is it up and running again, Calvin? I know we don't start operations till spring, but you'll start seeing again spring through fall is when we run the street sweeper. Fortunately, we were having some challenges with keeping it running last year, but we hope this year we'll have more positive operations with that. But that's a good idea. We also, the governing body did approve part-time and seasonal Public Works crew. We have a very small Public Works staff, so they're kind of committed to ongoing projects. The idea behind the part-time and seasonal part-time crew was to have people to go out and actually start picking trash up on the streets or along streams and other things, kind of these side projects that are important to our residents. Unfortunately, we've struggled with recruitment right now. There's general labor shortage across the board, and we really struggle with hiring the part-time. If you guys are aware of anyone who's interested in part-time work for Public Works, there we go. Please submit us your resumes because we help us get the word out as well, because that's going to be the best way to tackle these problems. The speeding issues on Scott are real. When we did the survey of speeding, that was one of the worst areas in our city. And we're evaluating a speed bump there. Our Public Works is going to move forward with the speed bump, but our fire department reached out to them and raised some concerns about the type. So we're evaluating which is the safest type for our fire trucks, but we are working on the speed bump as an issue. We also have a traffic study in the CIP. There's been ongoing grant-funded studies that we've been working on, but we're slowly working on a comprehensive traffic study as well. We've already secured for FY24, I want to say just under $1 million for some traffic safety enhancements along the entire Manassas Drive corridor, but there's still a lot more to be done. But it's our transportation program manager and Calvin Odell, our community development director. They've been working hard on trying to win a lot of grants to help fund a lot of these safety studies, because we've been hearing from our residents the same concerns. Our parking enforcement officer is back on the street. We finally were able to recruit someone for that position, so hopefully we can get them to stick around. For speeding, our officers do the best they can. We have about 25% turnover right now for our police, so we've struggled with recruitment or retention of our officers, and we don't have a traffic enforcement division, which every other jurisdiction does. So our officers who are responding to calls, domestics, other things, they're not on the streets doing traffic enforcement. Other jurisdictions actually have traffic enforcement divisions that focus exclusively on that. But our police, when they're freed up, when we have enough staffing, and they're not on calls, they are doing traffic. We do track data on ticketing, but not necessarily speeding. So I can't say whether speeding is growing, but certainly enforcement is going to ebb and flow based off of our staffing levels. We did more enforcement last year because we had a larger amount of police officers. This year we've had less. Overall, police just recruitment has been challenging across the region. You can argue the country as well, just less people in the labor pool for police. So it's been difficult for us, but we're still trying to do our best to enhance salaries to recruit and retain our officers. But they're doing the best they can with the limited staffing we have, but we know more has to be done. We hope that we'll glean better insights into the traffic study and what other structural enhancements need to be done. But we appreciate hearing from you all, because you guys sometimes are the best source of information in terms of where the trouble spots are. And we've been hearing constantly about Scott Drive, and we've seen it when we actually put the sensors out there in terms of the speeding, and then also the quality of the road. When we went to do resurfacing, it needed to be completely reconstructed because of how many cars are actually going on Scott Drive. So it is a challenge. It's on our radar. In terms of why we did the commercial vehicle parking ban, there's been concerns, just like there is right now. Speeding, I'm hearing a lot more over the last 6 months, speeding concern. I would say about a year and a half ago, we heard, and even before that, I think it's been just constant. We've just been heard, especially on the west side of the city, just the lack of parking spaces. So we did a town hall. We spent a lot of time talking about options for what to do, whether we want to do resident-only parking in certain districts, right? Decal-only parking in across the entire city or segments of the city. What we ended up was a kind of multi-phase approach where we want to start with banning commercial vehicles from parking on public streets, because when our public works crew was surveying, they realized that a good amount of the vehicles on the street, especially overnight, are actually commercial vehicles. So they're taking up spaces of residential. So the proposal was to start by banning them and allowing them to park on driveways. So you can have 2 vehicles per zoning, commercial vehicles on your driveways. So that we know we have a lot of a blue collar community, so we want to at least respect that, but we also want to we don't want abuse, right? Where you're bringing 3, 4, 5 commercial vehicles from your business and parking them on streets, limiting your all's ability to find parking. So that was the first step, is to scale that back and put up the signs, which have taken a long time from a procurement standpoint to get done, but the goal is to have them up by the early fall. We'll be advertising for about 4 months prior, so 3 months prior, general advertising that it's coming, and then when it's up, the signs, when we remove the bags, the first month, the intent will be to not issue actual citations with dollar amounts, but a kind of warning. That's what we usually like to do for a brief period of time, so people know this is coming, and then we go to the fine, so people will have about 4 months to make any adjustments they need to make to find places where to put those commercial vehicles. But we hope that will at least ease some of the concerns of the shortage of parking on the west side before we take any other more serious steps to help resolve those issues for our residents. So I know it's a lot, and you guys all raise incredibly valid points, and we're trying to tackle these issues. Again, please help spread the word about the part-time and seasonal public works crew, because that's going to be a huge success, a big bang for our buck in terms of keeping our streets and our streams clean as well, along with some of the initiatives that Councilmember Hampton and Councilmember Amaya are spearheading with kind of creating volunteer corps to help out and do different cleaning events as well across the city. So, thanks.
Thank you, City Manager. Thank you. Staff is trying to make progress, so thank you all for coming out again. Thank you. Moving on to public hearing. We have 2 public hearings this evening. The first public hearing is regarding the 2022 restated and amended service agreement for the Upper Occoquan Service Authority. I declare the public hearing open. Dean, is this you, or? Oh,
It's not me, it's Alan, but I just want to point out very quickly that the agenda item included 2 versions of the clean 2022 restated amended agreement. The first one is the correct one. The one that was attached at the back at the end is incorrect. So I think you guys have all received the
You guys have
updated
the correct,
version.
and we posted it online as well for residents who may be watching. If they can go to the attachments, we did update the corrected ones as an attachment as well.
So that hopefully there's no confusion now on what you'd be voting on if,
Okay.
and what's going to move forward.
Thank you, Dean. Welcome, Alan.
Yeah, right there. Just grab that mic and the green button.
Oh, I see. It's been a while. Good evening, everyone. My name
Hey, Alan,
is-
can you turn on the mic?
You gotta hold
You
it
gotta
up.
hold it up to your mouth.
Okay, good. Good evening, everyone. My name is Alan Rowley, and I am the Engineering Services Manager in Public Works. Since its inception in 1972, the agreement between the member jurisdictions that created the Upper Occoquan Service Authority has been amended multiple times. As a matter of good housekeeping, the agreement has occasionally been restated to incorporate previous amendments so that it's all in the same document. Tonight, 2 amendments are presented, which are then incorporated into a restated agreement. The substance of the First Amendment includes authorization to proceed with the planned expansion to 60 million gallons a day as planned in UOSA's 2020 Master Plan. It also includes an allocation of the increased capacity and allocation of costs associated with that expansion. Please note that the City of Manassas Park does not need any additional capacity at this time and is not participating in this expansion. The substance of the Second Amendment relates to how exceedances of allocated flow capacity and allocated pollutant loadings are calculated, and the threshold that would require a jurisdiction to temporarily terminate issuance of permits that result in flow or pollutant loadings to increase. The staff recommendation is that the governing body approve and authorize the mayor to sign the 2022 restated and amended service agreement for the Upper Occoquan Service Authority.
Thank you, Alan. And I would mention that as a board member of UOSA, I'm supportive of these changes. The board had ample time for extensive question and answer, first through email, and then there was an in-person work session on the possible changes. So it was a gradual process, and it was a lengthy process. My overall concern was that there always be a penalty on the localities for exceeding their 95% of their allocated capacity, and that penalty should continue to be a temporary moratorium on the issuance of permits that allow construction in the UOSA service area. So that penalty remains, as you've been able to determine from the documents, because honestly, folks don't take rules and limits very seriously unless there is a penalty. So with that, I just wanted to share my thoughts. Are there any comments or questions? Yes, ma'am.
Alan, I have a quick question. Have we ever come close or ever exceeded our allotted capacity?
No.
Okay.
Manassas City came very close at one point. They did not exceed, but they came extremely close. Okay. Comments or questions?
Well, I guess piggyback off Ms. Hampton's question. So what's the threshold? Like when would we require the extra capacity? Like, is there like a certain amount of gallons?
Basically, where the penalties start to come in
Yeah.
is if a community exceeds its allotted capacity or pollutant loading by more than 95% for 3 months running.
And so the
That's in the amendment.
projections from UOSA is that we're not close. They forecasted sometime 2045 is when they thought maybe. But again, everything's going to be dependent on what happens in the city in terms of development. But for right now, there's no concern. We have the capacity.
Yes.
Clarification on the expansion of UOSA, the 60 million gallons per day. So at some point, will we have to pay for those capital enhancements? I
Not for-
understand we're below it now, we're zero
Now,
today.
Right now, the city of Manassas and I believe it's Prince William County both need additional capacity, so they're footing the bill for this expansion.
And so once it's built, we will never be charged for the.
Not for that, no.
The capital okay. Thank you.
And our allocated capacity is not changing.
Yeah. But just a side note, our debt is going up slightly this year. When you see in the budget, that's from the capital maintenance
Yes.
debt issuances on the existing capacity, but not on the new. But we don't have to pay for this new capacity for Manassas and Prince William.
That's good.
Okay. Follow-up?
No, thank you.
Okay.
I just have one quick
Yes.
question. The city manager may be able to answer this. I know in the past, we looked at possibly leasing out part because we were even close to our capacity. Is that still something that we've looked at, or is that, I know it was a couple of years ago.
I don't remember how we ended up on that one. Let me reassess with staff. I know we looked at it. I just don't remember where we ended up specifically on that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Is there anyone, a member of the public, who would like to make public comment on this particular public hearing? Anyone? Seeing no one and hearing no one, do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Alan. Moving on to our second public hearing. The next public hearing is regarding the sale of city-owned property. I declare the public hearing open.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the governing body. Keith, do you have the controller to turn this thing off? Fortunately, it turns off if there's no activity. Okay, thanks, Keith. Okay, good evening, and just FYI, the franchisee for Popeyes, Mr. Mohammed Malek, is here as well. He doesn't necessarily want to say any words tonight, but if you have any questions, he is here. But before you tonight, we have a public hearing for proposal for us to convey city land to Popeyes to establish a drive-through restaurant on our Route 28 corridor, and where specifically. So just for reference, this is Sheets. So this is Cookout up here, Sheets, and then we'd be looking at this site for the Popeyes. Fortunately, again, the city owns the land, so we would be getting the market payment for the land, but you'll see later tonight kind of there's some stipulations with that. And just for reference, again, this is the intersection of 28 Manassas Drive. And then here's Park 170. I point out Park 170 because the deal here is also linked with some leasing of restaurant establishments in Park 170 as well. Okay, so what you have here is the plat, the subdivision plat. So you can see the city owns Lot 1 and Lot 2. The county currently holds this piece of the ground, but that's something we're in discussions with the county about what happened historically, why that didn't come to the city. But we're selling Lot 1 for Popeyes and preserving Lot 2, and then hopefully this parcel for future development as well. And you guys, hopefully the printed copies are coming for you all as well, but we were having issues with the printer. This is just the initial concept. Of course, Mr. Mullick has a lot more planning to do, site planning, building permitting, all that stuff. But this was the original concept plan for the drive-through establishment and how the feasibility for whether they can fit on that site. And then here's the payment schedule. So in total, the market value was just under $1 million, and then this is how they would be paying it. Normally, we charge this up front, but we're actually utilizing this land not only to secure a great franchise like Popeyes that's going to yield good tax returns for our residents, but also because the franchisees involved in other businesses across Northern Virginia. The goal was to incentivize the investments in Park 170 as part of this deal. So as I mentioned in my memo, there's two major reasons why that's important. Number one, that space across the street was not built the best way it could be for commercial. I'll put it that way, by the original developer, who was clearly more interested in eventually tricking the city to turn that into residential. We waited them out. That didn't happen. But there's a lot of capital investment that has to occur in Park 170 to make it work for commercial. So we're trying to incentivize businesses, help businesses out in fixing that space across the street. And then secondly, there's a black eye on that site because of what the previous owners, how they managed that property and pushed away businesses. There's concerns from businesses about going in there, being the first in for that project. So again, there's a need to incentivize, and that's what we're hoping to do with this structure, where what this represents here in this table is the square footage that if the franchisee owner of Popeyes, Mr. Malek, if him and his business, if they lease 5,000 to 10,000 square feet across the street in Park 170, they get a $24,000 annual discount on this payment schedule. Okay, and we're giving them the time here because, of course, we're still waiting on the activity, the completion of the VRE garage, the movie theater across the street, the anchor to kind of bring the other businesses to this site. So we're giving them time to do the build out and everything else. If they lease over 10,000 square feet to 15,000, they get a 49,000 square feet or $49,000 annual discount. And then you can see the rest of it. And if they lease more than 20,000, which is pretty much almost all of building A, they're building on the right, then they would essentially get a full discount on those years where they're leased on that site. So if it starts in year 8, then they get that discount starting in year 8. And then from a tax perspective, it's a great business. We know Popeyes. They do very well in the Mega Mart shopping center. It's one of the better Popeyes. So what they're missing there is the drive-through. So this site will give them the drive-through, which should expand their capacity. We have a very conservative estimate here, but you're looking about $1.5 million in tax revenues to the city over 10 years. But we think they're going to outperform that, especially with the presence of Cookout there as well, and kind of driving more interest and more traffic to that site as well. And then we're hoping to get another user behind them as well that's going to drive people to that site. So that is all I have, pending any questions.
Okay, comments or questions? Yes, ma'am.
So I have a question, I have two questions. The first one, how are we going to handle traffic? Because I'm thinking of the Popeyes on 234, and sometimes the line, especially when they have something special, lines out there past the parking lot into that right lane on 234.
Yeah. So what you saw with Cookout, it was initially an issue. They had to kind of have expanded staff to help with traffic flow. The better part of this site is that you have a longer stretch between the intersection of 28 and Manassas Drive. You also have better access off of Mathis as well. So they're building this from a raw stretch of land, whereas Cookout had the disadvantage of their site was already developed. They were just building a building, so it wasn't properly designed for flow of drive-through. But I don't know, Mr. Mullick, if you want to add to anything about how you would facilitate drive-through. Yeah, if you can come up here and address that on the mic. Yeah.
Actually, for the drive-through, the line actually not only, it's not going to be too much on 28 because when you make the right turn, there's a corner avenue. There is almost 4 or 5 cars that can park there, and then inside the parking lot, it actually goes all the way around the building.
Okay.
So, you'd have to have at least 20, 25 cars in the window for it to really back up. And, and normally, on average, you have 4 or 5 cars in line at all points. So, because I know the Cookout, there's literally no space for 28 and it's more parking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And hardly, but ours is, goes around Connor Avenue, goes up, make a right turn, goes around the parking lot, and then comes on the other side. I think you had the map of it up there with the
Yeah.
arrow. If you bring it up, you'll see, go back a little bit.
This one?
No, one more back, the land.
This one?
Right there. You see the Connor Avenue,
Yes.
and you see 28? So you have to
Yep.
come down 28, drive all the way to Connor Avenue halfway, go back in, loop around. So, it's quite a lot of stress for the customer, so I don't see any backup of traffic at all.
Okay.
To be very honest with you.
Okay, thank you. And then my second question is for the city manager. On the off chance that Popeyes is not successful, what will happen?
Yeah, Popeyes. And
Yeah.
it depends, I guess, if they finished paying off. If they haven't finished paying off, I'm not sure what the legal, you're saying if they shut down as a business?
Right, on the off
Okay.
chance.
I'm not sure what the legal ramifications would be for that one.
Well, if the Popeyes doesn't work, but they keep making payments, then they're gonna,
Sure.
yes, if they stop making payments, they'll be in default.
Okay,
So, yeah, I don't know. As long as they're making payments, they can then go and get another restaurant in there or try something else. Once it's zoned, they're gonna be able to do whatever that zoning allows for, although there are provisions in here that they're gonna have to file for a proffer condition that limits the kind of uses that can go in there without further land use application. But, yeah, the answer is if it doesn't work, then it's just like anything else, that they default and, the city takes action.
okay.
But just to reassure you, they're already very successful in the Mega Mart shopping center without a drive-through. The drive-through is just going to expand capacity significantly.
Do you have a follow-up?
No, those are my two questions. Thank you.
Councilmember Carrera?
I just have a comment. I appreciate the application. I think it's great. I met the business center many years ago. I actually dine there pretty often, and it's probably one of the better run, cleanest operations I've seen. What would the build time be? Is this hoping if it's passed that it would be within 12 months, 18 months? 12 months.
12 months, but that's going to be dependent on site plan approval, building
Everything.
permitting. But you're assuming once you get your building permit, 12 months?
Yeah, so we're looking at
Probably 18.
the site plans, the civil work to be done, the design, everything to be completed.
And the only recommendation I would consider on the site is just moving the trash. Is it possible you can go to the rear? Just because it's still visible from the street. I don't know, it's just a
Yeah,
recommendation.
actually, it's funny you mentioned that. Yeah, so that is a.
Or
that is
bushes.
some- Yes, yeah, that has,
If possible, if it can.
yeah, it is actually moving on the other side. It
Oh,
is.
okay.
Yeah, because there's some trees up there and I need a sign.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the trash is moving.
So I believe it's a win situation, so thank you.
Thank you.
I just point out, it has to go through a rezoning, and that's going to be something that comes up at that time.
Do you have a follow-up?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I have two questions. The first thing, in order for them to be eligible for the discount on the payments, it says that they have to lease City Center, but it doesn't say that they actually have to have a business there. should
You're
be.
talking about lease business space?
Open something. It doesn't say that there needs to be a.
Okay, so you want to change the language to
Yes.
lease and open the business?
Yes,
Open and run the business?
yes.
Okay, all right.
And second,
So again, we'd have to, that's a good point to bring up tonight, and we'll go back and talk it over with the applicant.
okay.
Okay.
And then second, just somewhere in there, if they were to ever sell the land, that we would get the right of first refusal.
Okay, all right, we can look at that.
I would just point out that we've tried that in the past, and that really gums up any ability for them to get a loan, because the banks don't like us to have a priority lien on it. So we have tried that in the past. There are other ways to try to do what you want to do, but putting a priority in front of a bank lien is going to kill their ability to make that work.
Well, I wouldn't want to do that, so if that's a,
Yeah, that's the problem we've had.
Okay.
Before 2008, you could do stuff like that. After that, the banks got really scared about those kind of provisions.
okay. Well, I wouldn't want to stop the business
Yeah,
from
I don't think
coming,
you'd be
so-
able to get a good loan
Okay,
if we did
well
that.
then, scratch that, but just,
Okay.
Follow up?
no.
Okay. Councilmember Moore?
Well, just quickly to Councilmember Mensing's point, as far as the zoning ordinance that you say we'll have to address at some point, could we withdraw the zoning that we change if it changes business or it changes hands?
Well, you can't do, you could put something in the contract that requires them to seek a rezoning to put it back to the original A1 designation. But then again, we'd have to seek specific performance to get them to do that if they denied it. You can't do it within the zoning law. You can contract to make them do stuff if something else happens, but you can't say, we're just giving you a conditional zoning that's only good if you do X, Y, and Z, then we're going to pull it back. But because we own the land, we can put some language in there into the contract that says, if you don't do this, then you have to do X, Y, Z.
Okay. My other question is, well, I'm excited as well about the idea of Popeyes coming in there. I have a question about hours of operation. Your current business closes too soon for me. And one of the neat things about Cookout is it stays open till almost 3 or 4 o'clock. I'm hoping that you're going to
Well, actually, that
extend
one
your
that-
hours that long.
Yeah, because we don't have a drive-through location, we don't have to stay open late. and I believe
Exactly.
it's till 10 o'clock. But if it is a drive-through, then they recommend that at least we will stay open till midnight.
That's
And-
exciting.
And most of the stores do that. They're usually open from 11:30 to 12 on drive-through.
Yes.
And the dining normally closes at 10. But the current location that we have, there is no drive-through, so we close at 10:30.
That's why.
But with drive-through, it'll be much longer, of course.
Well, that's exciting. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for that question.
Yeah.
Do you have a question?
So the franchisor is not owning the land? I guess it will be the private business owner?
You're talking about, does Popeyes corporate own it? No, I believe it's Mr. Malek's LLC.
Right, but usually,
Yeah.
sometimes a franchise company likes to hold the land.
No,
Okay.
that's not, I think they do that in Subway.
Yeah.
From what I know, but Popeyes do not get involved in that. The franchisees will have to get their own lease of the land.
Okay.
And so there is no lien or they don't have anything on it.
And then for the site approval, I guess they already approved this site?
Yes,
Back in
that's
like 2022, I believe.
Like, you see down there, there's a date.
Yeah.
And there's
So that was almost a year ago, so no changes?
Yes, there will be changes, that the trash can is gonna move.
No, he's saying that Popeyes hasn't rescinded the approval. Like, they're still approving the
still-
site.
No, it's still there. It's still in effect, yes. As a matter of fact, I think they reached out to me about 4 months ago and told me what's going on, and then I had to reapply, and they said,
Right.
okay, it's still
Okay.
on for, I believe, till the end of this year.
And that's it. Thank you.
Follow up? No? Okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay. Is there anyone, a member of the public, who would like to make public comment on this public hearing? Okay. Seeing no one, hearing no one, and seeing no one, do we have a motion to close the
moved.
public hearing?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you very much, and thank you for being with us this evening. Thank you. Okay, moving on to consent agenda. Consent agenda consists of approval of the minutes of February 21st and February 28th. Adoption of a resolution in support of the Capital Area Food Bank's congressional spending request of $1.68 million for the reconstruction of its facility in Lorton, Virginia, as presented, and subject to final review by city attorney. Approval and authorization for city manager to sign the necessary contractual documents to purchase 5 new Motorola radios at a cost not to exceed $44,155 as presented, subject to final review by city attorney. Approval and authorization for the city manager to sign any necessary contractual documents for the purchase of voting machines and scanners within the budgeted amount of $100,000 as presented and subject to final review by city attorney. Ratification of the city manager's ending of the local emergency declaration for SARS-CoV-2 virus, also known as COVID-19, effective March 7th, 2023. Approval and authorization for the city manager to sign the Upper Kent Drive Additional Construction Administration Services Change Order, date February 6, 2023, with Bowman Consulting Group Limited in an amount not to exceed $84,476.35 as presented and subject to final review by city attorney, and that the city manager be directed to amend the FY23 CIP to cover this $84,476.35 utilizing NVTA 30% funds. Do we have a motion?
Moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, moving on to, there's no unfinished business, so moving on to new business. 9A is fireworks contract.
Can you hear me? Oh, it's loud. Good evening, Mayor and members of the governing body. Tonight, I will be presenting to you the fireworks contract options. As seen in the agenda item, we are proposing 2 new changes for this year, one being the electronic firing option. Just to give a little background on that, last year it was noted that there were some gaps, some delays in the fireworks show. It was supposed to be around 25 minutes. It's been around 30 minutes for the past few years. And with that, we wanted to request essentially quotes regarding how we can possibly mitigate those gaps, and we came upon the electronic firing option, which you can see we have 2 different contracts. One is the first contract, which will be the hand-lit option. It is $22,000 and $200. I did want to make note that it says in the agenda item that it is not budgeted, that the budget is only for $20,200, but in actuality, we have budgeted enough, so we have budgeted $22,200. Essentially, we looked at the FY23 budget. We should have been looking at FY24. So there will not need to be an amendment of $2,000 for that option. The second option is the electronic firing display. That option essentially is going to create a more seamless show. We don't have to worry about human error. We don't have to worry about people, things going wrong, fireworks not being lit the right way. That option is $38,000, which would require an amendment of $15,800, if my math is right. Added to that to meet that option cost. And then finally, the final change that we're requesting is to change the date from the Tuesday, July 4th to Saturday, July 1st. We've talked about this for a little over a year now as far as the date change. One being, with it being a Tuesday, we think changing it to a Saturday, residents won't have to get up early the next day and go to work. They don't have to take their kids to summer camp. They don't have to take their kids to daycare. They'll be able to enjoy the holiday, enjoy the weekend, and enjoy the fireworks and not have to worry about getting back. The second reason is that we won't have to compete with the city of Manassas. which would be nice, and the surrounding areas as well. Currently, if you have seen the traffic on Liberia Avenue trying to get out of the park and competing with their traffic at the same time, it can take residents a really, really long time to get home, up to 45 minutes just to drive home. So doing that on a Tuesday night, we think that could also have an impact on the turnout that we get. So we think that could also bring a better turnout if we were to do it on a Saturday night versus the Tuesday night holiday. And then finally, we also would like to be able to give our city staff the holiday off. It says in the agenda item that some have been working for a decade. I can attest to that. I've worked for the past 11 years. So, and there are people that have worked there much longer than me every single year. So I'm open to any questions, comments
Thank you.
regarding those changes.
Yeah, thank you very much. I can certainly support holding the event on July 1st. I think it's important that staff is with their families, you know. I personally doubt if we need the electronic firing option. I've been to many city fireworks displays, and they're all wonderful, you know, as they are. So I'm not so sure we need to spend the extra $16,000. It might minimize, although it could minimize the delay between firing. I don't think there's a guarantee that it would eliminate. Is that correct? Am I correct on that?
It's pretty much, I mean, it's a pretty close to a guarantee. Obviously, there can always be error, but they work really hard to make sure that these are set up and ready to go leading up to the event. So it'd be pretty low.
Yeah, okay. Well, unless someone has a very persuasive argument, I might hesitate to spend that extra $16,000, but comments or questions?
Zero has a.
Yes.
Well, first of all, I think the Saturday, July 1st is an excellent idea. Our employees deserve to have that holiday off with their family. Also, I believe there might be some significant savings with the police department not having to work on a holiday, which is great. And so maybe some of that savings could be used for the electronic process. Because when I went to the last 2 years, the show, there's a noticeable delay. And particularly the delay is obvious when Manassas fireworks or you could see it off in the sun. I mean, they're constantly being shut off. Ours is, delayed. And then there's another one. But since we're doing it on a day that Manassas will not, it won't be noticeable. We won't be comparing it to the great show that Manassas is showing. So I think maybe it's not worth the $16,000 this year, but definitely want to support the Saturday, July 1st going forward.
Follow-up?
Nope.
Oh, comments or questions? No? Comments or questions? Yes, ma'am.
I like July 1st for a lot of reasons. A, I can go, I don't have to get up next day and go to work. And the other, like you said, for years we've been competing against Manassas City and other jurisdictions. Once upon a time, we were the only city that actually had fireworks back in my youth. We were the place to come. I agree with my council members that have spoken thus far. I can't really support an extra $16,000 on the electronic ones. It's a beautiful thing to have, but it's not essential. So I'm fine with the first, and I'm okay with the $22,200. Also having it on the first, because also free up the police, because I could tell you, I can attest from the past few years, the amount of illegal fireworks on July 4th, especially on the west side, is atrocious. Enough where I don't leave my house anymore because of the dog. So I think that also frees up the police to do what they need to do to try to tackle that issue. And the key word is try.
Yeah, interesting that you brought that up, because every year the illegal fireworks set off my alarm system.
Yeah, and people forget about veterans, PTSD with veterans,
Yes.
and anybody else that's gone through any type of explosion.
Exactly. Do you have a comment? Question?
Thank you for the, I'm supportive of moving it to July 1st. If there's an issue with it down the line or a couple of years, we can always revisit it. But I think it's a good idea to move it to the 1st. I agree with you, Ms. Mayor. I think we should just go with option 1. I think what I've seen in the past, I think that's been great. I think people have been satisfied. Majority of the community's been satisfied. I know there's been some delays, but sometimes that can occur. But I think many people in the community are very satisfied with the offer. So I'm supportive of option 1 and moving it to the first Saturday.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any comments? No. Yes, go ahead.
I mean, July 1st is going to change every year, right? So
Right.
I guess what you're proposing is to do the weekend before July 4th.
We'll evaluate that each
Every
year to
year?
see what makes more sense each time. So you're absolutely right. The July 1st is not the date we're going to do it from now on. It's just, it made sense this year. So each year we'll evaluate, see where July 4th lies, and then make a recommendation for where we think it makes sense.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, this year I agree with the July 1st. I'm going to go the opposite route, though. I think I'm in favor for option 2 for the fireworks display. I mean, this is the one time a year we have literally thousands of families coming together to enjoy fireworks. I mean, the kids' faces light up, and seeing that community feel, I don't know, 16,000 I think might be worth it to me. I mean, just having we had a lot of complaints last year about the delay. It was just, people thought it was over, they started leaving, and then all of a sudden the fireworks would start up again. So I think a seamless transition for the fireworks. I mean, this is a one time a year type of thing. I think we could budget extra 16,000 for it to have a nice, good display, and families can enjoy it. Yeah, that's just my opinion there, but
Okay, okay.
I might be the minority on that one.
Yeah, we need to determine which motion we're going to make. So, Councilmember Javed, you're for option,
Yeah, 2.
option 2, okay. Councilmember Moore, you're for 1. Vice Mayor?
I'm for option 1. I think for now we should stick with the more conservative estimate on the spending.
Okay.
We have other things to
I'm
spend
for
on.
option 1. Which option 1? Option 1, and 1 and 1. Okay, all right, so I know which. Are there any more questions or comments before we move to the vote? Okay. Okay, there are 2 recommended motions here. The first is that the governing body approve and authorize the city manager to sign any necessary contractual documents with Starfire Corporation for July 4th fireworks in an amount not to exceed $22,200 as presented and subject to final city attorney review.
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Second motion is that the governing body direct the city manager to amend the FY23 budget to increase the budget for the July 4th fireworks by $2,000.
I thought we no longer need that.
It's not
I beg your
needed.
pardon?
We no longer need that.
Oh, I see. I thought there was an increase in the 22,200. There is not. Okay. Number, I'm sorry?
I looked at FY '23 instead of FY '24, so it's not needed.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're set. Thank you. Much appreciated. Okay, moving on to 9B. 9B is FEMA Safer Grant Award. Welcome, Chief,
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the governing body.
and congratulations
Well, thank
on
you.
being awarded the grant.
So
It's wonderful.
I'm not going to read this agenda item word for word. I will highlight it just so the folks at home understand what we're talking about. Then we'll open up for questions. I'm sure there'll be some questions. I'll answer all the subject matter questions I can answer about how we use them, why we need them, and all that good stuff. Most of the financial stuff, I'm going to defer to our city manager, who has all the numbers, built in and has looked at the outcome of this thing for the long term. But, just give you the history in FY 22, back in February 22 of last year, the fire department, along with our grant company, Merchant McIntyre, we applied for a FEMA grant for additional personnel for the fire station. We realized that in order to get us to minimal staffing that we need for every day, in order to get the fire engine, the ambulance, which is our medic unit, battalion chief out the door, and our unstaffed ladder truck out the door, to meet the minimal requirements what the city needs, we need 15 additional people to do that. So we wrote the grant based off of the National Fire Protection Association 1710 standard, which dictates how the career fire department should be staffed. Submitted that, used some of the language that the insurance services offices, when they come out and evaluate the fire department, the water system, the communication system, For years, since 2009, we've been hearing the same thing. You need additional staffing, you need more ladder trucks, and you need better training records. So the one thing we could fix was the training records. We did that. The one thing we couldn't fix was the ladder truck staffing and the additional staffing. This grant fixes that for the city. So the award was for 15 people, 100% paid for 3 years. The award was for 3.5882,866. So almost $3.6 million awarded to the city. So that it covers for FY '24, '25, and '26. After that, the city will have to pick up the salaries for those personnel.
Well, now,
The city manager kind of has the.
yeah, let me correct that. So we will be applying for the grant at that time, again, before it's expiring. And then at that time, depending on what happens with the grant, we'll evaluate what we can retain and what not.
There's no restrictions on reapplying.
There's no restrictions, yeah.
Yeah, we'll keep replaying.
Do you think the chances would be greater if you'd already received a grant to get the second grant?
Yeah, I believe so, yeah. Especially if we can demonstrate the success.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So what we can show you is, if you look at the second page, the staffing of Manassas Park versus our other like agencies like Fairfax City, Fredericksburg. We're a small staff of 29. We're looking at a population in Manassas Park roughly 18 to 20,000. That's very dense. You're asking 29 staff personnel, which we have 6 operational personnel on duty every day, a minimum of 6. We need more than 6 every day to really, truly function and operate in a city of this size. And this is something we probably should have done many, many years ago. Former fire chief back in 2004 realized we needed ladder truck and staffing then. We got the ladder truck from the federal government then. We never staffed it. It was sold. City manager said, "Yep, I believe in that vision. You can go." We bought a used ladder truck, save money. Now we're trying to get the staffing to get this thing back at the door to better serve our residents of this city. In talking to our partners from Prince William and Manassas, they're like, "We'll give you all this assistance we can give you, but at some point you need to stand on your own 2 feet with the minimal staffing that you can get for the engine, the medic, and the truck." So that's what we're here to do, is to ask for that support. I have till next week to log in and either accept or deny the grant, and that's going to be determined by the governing body tonight.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
Yes, ma'am.
Comments or questions?
Well, I'm excited that we're able to finally staff our ladder truck that we bought a couple years ago, and to provide a safer environment for our residents, particularly those in high-rise buildings or tall buildings that we can't reach with normal apparatus. I think it's extremely exciting. I think our chances of getting this grant a second time is very good. And I don't know how you walk away from close to $3.6 million. I think we need to accept this. We need to get our number of fire employees up to a number that is suitable for the size of our city. And so I'm just excited to approve and vote for this grant today, Chief Soper, and I appreciate your presentation here tonight. Thank you.
And you're right, you don't walk away from that.
No, you
Not at
can't. I don't
all.
see how you
Yeah.
do.
Fortunately, the city has already begun budgeting to hire for
Correct.
the fire truck, so that
There's
already
been great
began.
foresight over there.
Yeah, that started, so thank you for that. Comments or questions? Yes, ma'am.
So Chief, I got 2 questions for you.
Yes, ma'am.
The first one, now that you have the grant, well, we're going to think positive, we're all going to say yes to the grant, and you have the grant. How will the grant tie in and the ability to run the ladder truck tie into recruitment?
So, as Mr. Palco said earlier, police departments, fire departments across the country are having issues with recruitment, right? So we're going to have to get outside of our little comfort zone of what we've been doing for the last 30 years in this city. We may have to hire untrained personnel and send them to an academy somewhere. We can partner up with different agencies around the county, around the region, have good relationships with a lot of the fire chiefs that would probably help us with that. We have some instructors in our own department that could hire some of the youngsters coming out of the high school. Maybe we get to high school. I would love to be able to hire our own residents to come to work in Manassas Park. That hasn't been something we could do in the past because we hire certified personnel.
It's something we have lost both on the PD side and on the FD side. I know for years that's how it was. And then my second question is, once we approve the grant, how quickly will you go out with recruiting?
So once we approve the grant, they give us 180 days to onboard all personnel.
Wow,
So we're going to have to start working pretty quick to get all 15 on board.
wow.
Should we lose one or two during that time, it extends out a little farther, right?
Okay.
So as long as you can keep bringing that same one or two, three, four, whatever you lose out of that grant, bring them back in, it extends it a little farther. So we would have to do some really creative thinking on how to recruit 15 people. They're not going to be all certified firefighters. The goal would to hire as many certified as possible to get them to the streets as fast as possible, but if we can get 15 certified, that'd be great. But I'll be talking with the city manager. I think we got some ideas how to move some things along.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question, and
Yes, sir.
congratulations on the grant. I'm very supportive
you.
of the grant. The only concern I have is that I would like to see them advertised as term-limited positions with the possible of hire, because if we don't get the grant, and hopefully it can be successful, I get concerned that we hire people, we're doubling the size of the fire department. $3 million is about 10 to 12 cents on the tax rate. And I want employees to know when they come in that that they understand that this is grant funded, and hopefully we can have the opportunity to fund them and make them permanent, because I don't want 3 years from now, like, oh, we're cutting 15 people if we don't get the grant. And I know some people say, well, that's a morale issue, but again, on the other end, we have to be transparent with our community, especially, we're almost, increasing the size by 50% if we can't get that grant.
So we won't be advertising that. We'll be doing our best to recruit people, and we're going to go in with the assumption that the grant is going to be approved again, and if it's not, we're going to retain what we can with the budget. That's the transparency we're going to provide to our residents, what is feasible with the budget at that time. But again, we're going to be proactively pursuing the grant. Again, we don't want to advertise letting people know, hey, you're only here for 3 years, because we're not going to be able to recruit anyone if we're doing that. So we're going to be confident that we're going to secure the grant again, and we're going to have them. We don't know what's happening from a development standpoint over the next few years, what revenues are going to be coming to the city. We don't know any of that stuff. So to tell all of them that you're gone in 3 years, it's just not going to work.
And let me just comment on that, because a lot of the jurisdictions around do that. They do say it's term limited with the possibility to hire. It does give some cons, but it also gives some pros. You can get the ability to get people who are retired in, you get people to grow, and then they can move in. To me, to hire people, and at least not let them know in some way that there's a possibility that their position can be eliminated in 3 years. I've seen this. I've seen this firsthand working in the government. It's just not, it's not right. I don't feel right about that. So it should know that there is a funding mechanism, that the plan is to hire them permanently. But then again, if it doesn't come about, we have to terminate all 15 or have a mixture. I think it's a responsibility that we should have as an employer to let them know that that's a possibility.
Yeah, I'm going to advocate for what's best for the city, and what's best for the city is being able to recruit and retain employees. We're going to treat our employees the best we can, and we're going to do all we can to secure that grant and to figure out the budget mechanism to retain as many of those firefighters as we can if we're not successful with the grant. But I have to do what's in the best interest of the city and make sure that we have an adequately staffed fire department, and Manassas Park is just not the same as other jurisdictions in Northern Virginia. We are far behind when it comes to salaries and our ability to retain employees, and so we have to always think about our residents and what's best for them, and we're going to try to do our best to recruit and retain as many firefighters as we can.
Let me just one comment, and I appreciate that. And my responsibility is to advocate for the residents of the city. When we have the highest tax rate in the state, it is a concern. And when you're increasing a department by 50%, 12 additional cents, that is a concern. But thank you.
Councilmember Amaya, did you have a comment?
No.
I saw you move your mic, so I thought.
No.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm very excited to support this grant.
Thank you.
Will your fire station be able to house 15 more people, or are you going to need to?
Currently, yes.
Okay.
It's going to be tight. Mr. Palco had the same exact question, and we talked about that. With the way our current shift is constructed, with the way the Fair Labor Standard laws are written, we have to give people these called Kelly days, so they have personnel off every day. And then there's always leave. There's always sick leave. So basically adding 5 people per shift, because we're broken up over 3 shifts, right? So we'll add 5 people per shift. we're probably only going to gain 3 people out of that, 3 people for that ladder truck every day. So really only going to add 3 people to the building every day, maybe a 4th if there's no sick leave or annual leave. So we're really going to have to find space for just 4 people, which I think, again, we outgrew the building in 2006 after it was built. But I think realistically we can find that space until, time comes that we move out of there and move somewhere else.
Okay, great, thanks.
We'll get along, we'll play nice.
Yes, Councilmember Moore?
Yeah, just one final comment, more to the city manager and maybe to my colleagues on the dais. Merchant McIntyre has gained their weight in gold in the contracts that they have provided for us. And I hope the city manager will pass on to them our thanks for this contract. This is $3.6 million. And this is just one of many grants that they brought to our city because of their work. They have proved themselves as being effective, and I just appreciate their hard work. So
Yeah, it was
appreciate having them.
It was a great investment by the governing body at that time. There was concerns was going to pay off, and it has more than paid off, but also the staff work that's gone into that. Chief Soper and his team providing the data that they needed to be successful, constantly working with them, and across all the departments. It's been a lot of time and effort for each line department to work with Merchant McIntyre to give them all the data they needed to get this done, and then our finance staff for all the compliance stuff, which is very difficult when you're dealing with federal compliance, especially for grants. And then even Steve and Calvin just winning separately other transportation projects as well directly from the state. So it's just been a good couple years for getting grants, and it's become an administrative burden. I'll tell you that for all the compliance stuff that we have to do.
Pays to hire professionals. Absolutely.
One last question.
Yes.
And this is probably more, I guess, both of y'all. Are there other grants out there that we're looking at as well, in addition to the one we just received?
Yes.
Do you want to talk about the?
So we actually are going to start applying for one for the fire marshal's office, which would bring an additional personnel on for the fire marshal's office, which is kind of like the SAFER grant where they kind of pay out so much per year. And that would be with the goal of succession planning for our current fire marshal. He's already identified his retirement date, right? So you approve the deputy fire marshal. The goal would be to train that individual up for the fire marshal's position, bring another person in through this grant as the deputy fire marshal, so that our fire marshal's office never loses its stride, because it's really functioning really well right now.
And we only have one fire marshal right now, correct?
Right. So trying to find that succession plan is huge for that office.
Okay, thank you.
And there's also the what is it? It's
we
not
also-
SAFER, but EF.
We have an AFG, which is
AFG.
Assistance to Firefighter Grant. So we also ask for another 500 and some thousand worth of radio equipment, which we should find out something, I would say, during the fall.
Okay.
And then we always do stuff through the Virginia Rescue Squad's Assistance Fund grant, which we just wrote one and asking for about $25,000, $30,000. So we try to secure as many grants as we can. A lot of times we looked at it as a small municipality, and we don't really, as a staff, we thought we had the right words, but using Merchant McIntyre, they found the buzzwords that we needed because they work with a lot of larger clients. So it's been a big help, but
Yeah,
again,
grant writing is a science in and of itself.
yeah, so.
Is your Narcan grant, no, that's grant, that's fully grant. When does that expire?
We don't do the Narcan grant. I think that's more for the police department.
You don't do any Narcan?
We get it through the pharmacy, through the hospital.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Councilmember Carrera, I had problems hearing your question.
I was just requesting, just information about the Narcan,
Yeah.
their use of Narcan. So.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Comments or questions? Yes.
Hey, thank you, Chief. So say we get this $3 million grant, but we don't hire 15 people. We have to return that back, or what happens with the grant?
So that's a question that we still don't have the answer to. I reached out to our grant specialist.
Yeah.
Never heard a phone call back yet. It's been a week. Called him 3 or 4 times, left messages. She hasn't called back. From what I understood from the gentleman that answered the phone, he said, I can't really give you the exact answer. Here's what I think the answer is going to be, that you have to hire 15 with this grant. So if we can't hire the 15, yes, we're going to have to give what we don't spend back.
So for the specialist talking about, that's a federal employee. So we asked the question because since we submitted this, the market for the pay has just skyrocketed. So what they allocated us per position doesn't work. So we wanted to ask them, well, can we reduce the number of firefighters and reinvest that money into matching the salary to reduce the financial impact on the city? But we didn't have an answer. So Chief is still digging.
Okay,
But I think the goal is going to be to hire the 15.
right.
because that's the minimal number we need to make
Oh,
this
yeah,
work.
I mean, I'm
So,
optimistic,
yeah.
but, you know, our history
So
here,
we're-
we have
We're going to do our work to get 15.
a hard time recruiting, you know, in the park. But
was a-
I hope we could get to 15. And my next question is that the 400,000, the city match, is that every year or is that just a one-time city match?
No, that's over the 3 years. It's not a city match. What that is that they gave us the money for a base salary amount, which is no longer the market amount. So that 400,000 covers the market adjustment plus associated costs like uniforms, PPE, other costs that come with bringing on those employees. That existing $400,000 that we had in the budget would cover that. But it's over 3 years, that 400,000. It's
I'm
not a
saying
per year.
The total sum.
Yeah,
for
the
3 years,
total, yeah.
400,000. And then, does that include, this 291,000, does that include sending uncertified personnel to a training camp? Or is that an extra cost as well?
No, it's all tied in there.
It's tied in there as well? Okay. Yeah, I mean, good job with the grant. I mean, it's much needed. And I hope we
Thank you.
can,
Well, I'll give credit to where it goes. Merchant McIntyre, our admin staff, our operations chief, I just get to stand here and get the praise. It's the staff up the street that did the work. All right? I don't want to take the credit. They did the work.
Right.
So,
And just,
follow-up?
yeah, just one quick question. So to get a ladder truck, you need how many, 6 personnel in there just to make it,
so,
Function?
according to, if you look at the NFPA 1710 standard, which you can look up any day of the week you want,
Yeah.
they require that safely should have a minimum of 3 personnel every day on the ladder truck, the engines, but they ask for an optimum of 4, right? That's what they require. Like Fairfax County puts 4 people every day.
yeah.
Prince William County is doing 4 people every day. The 2 little cities like Manassas and Manassas Park, we do 3, which is minimal. The city manager heard when we sit with the ISO folks last month or January, they want to see 6 people. I don't think we'll ever see 6 people.
Yeah.
That's a little up there, but if you want to give 6 people, I'd be glad to take it today.
But I guess the follow-up is that, so the 15 number, did we come up with that or the grant came up with that amount,
The
number?
fire department came up with that, saying that's what we need to get to minimal staffing for the ladder truck.
Across all the shifts.
Yeah.
Right.
By breaking them up
But I'm
amongst the
saying
shifts.
if we can function with, say, 10, can we still keep the grant though? Since we said, all right, we need 15, you know what? That's, actually, we can function with 10.
Well, we can keep the grant, like if we're not able to get all the 15, it's just, I think we'd have to return the unused money for those employees that we weren't able to hire.
So I guess we'll see at
Yeah, we'll see how many we can
Yeah,
get, and that's our understanding. If you don't spend the grant, then you're gonna have to report that to the federal government, they're gonna ask for that money back.
Yeah, we tried to get to 15 because that's the minimal number we show when we look at our staffing figures. We need this amount of people per day. And it shows that we need these additional 15 people to give us the extra 3 to 4 people per day to truly staff at minimal staffing, not even at maximum staffing, but at minimal. That's how far we behind the region. So,
Follow-up? Are you done, Councilmember?
Oh, yes, sorry.
Yeah,
Sorry,
okay.
yes.
Okay. Comments or questions? Any remaining comments or questions? Okay. Then the staff recommendation is that the governing body approve and authorize the city manager to accept the SAFER grant funding from FEMA in the amount of $3,582,866.25 as presented, subject to final review by city attorney.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you, Chief. That's super. Okay, moving on to 9C, which is downtown garage funding.
Okay, so the garage, you read the history in the memo, I won't go over it. I hope residents had a chance to kind of read the history behind the garage, but to keep it simple, this is the amount, it's over budget, it would have been much more had our transportation manager not proactively
Is your mic on? Is your mic on?
It is off. My apologies. So the overage right now is 6.1 million. It would have been over 8 million had our transportation program manager not proactively last year secured a $2.5 million grant, knowing that we were going to be dealing with inflation. So the amount of overage for that garage is significant. However, again, he had foresight and he applied for more. And luckily we put in for 6.1 million. So we're short just by 29,000, assuming we win that DRPT grant. So you can see with the agenda, I really do need your all's help with engaging our state representatives to help us secure that grant, just like we secured the $2.5 million to cover this overage. There's other, funding sources available. The VRE, awesome on their part. They sent us another source this week that they believe we can tap into as well to cover that 6.1. But again, with all these MBTA, I-66 concessionaire funding, we'll need your all's assistance, and especially Mayor Jeanette, Rochelle, in helping us secure this funding as well, engaging with these boards to secure the funding for the city to make up this gap. But the VRE needs to hear from us that even though we have more than a year to come up with this money, because again, they already have a sizable amount, and by the time they get to the point where they'll need this money, you're talking about at least a year from this June is when they'll probably start tapping into this money. So we have time to secure other funding, but they need guarantees, as we have in the agreement. We already have an agreement with them telling them that we would cover it, but this sizable overage, they just wanted reassurance that this governing body is committed to covering it if in case we're not successful with these other grants that we've been applying for to cover this. Again, we're confident that we're going to secure something, and hopefully a sizable portion, if not all the funding we need to cover this, minus that $29,000 gap. But what I've done is identified available sources of revenue if we have as a fallback position to ensure that the garage continues on pace. Luckily, with the Phase 3 in the project fund, we put in some funding for the city level of parking as well to cover that. So that's about 2.3 million. I really would like to keep this ARPA facility where it is. We toured the facility that we're looking at today for Public Works. We're going to have to do some renovations there. So that's where this money would be coming from. So I'd really hope not to have to touch into that one. META, we'd have about $1.8 million. Again, we can tap into that if needed, but that just slows down the pace of resurfacing over the next few years. So again, the hope is we don't have to tap into that. And then again, the big one is the Norton Scott land contribution. We got a pretty good amount of money from this Phase 3 development. My hope again was not to have to tap into that, because the first use of that money was to cover the time period where the assessments for all these 2/2s that you're seeing are not enough to cover the rent payments for this building. That we would start tapping into this money so that we're not pulling it out of the general tax pool from our residents, right? The good news is, those, right when that property was rezoned, it actually appreciated in value. So we actually started collecting money just from the rezoning, so, 3 years ago. So there has been already money collected from that development even before a house was built. Now the homes are being built and people are moving in. We're going to see money from that. The rent payments for this building start next year at about just under $500,000. So I'll run the math for you all in the budget and see how much is already, the funding we have from that development. It'll likely cover it this year, but we'll see what any gaps there are. Next year goes up to the year after, FY25 goes up to 1 million, and the year after that, FY26 goes up to 1.5 million. So we kind of scaled it to give us some time for the residential development to complete. Luckily, they're selling for higher than what we planned in the budget model by a sizable amount, so that's good news. So we feel confident that we'll make it up. But again, this pot here was just as a backup plan in case that didn't happen, so that we could stay to our commitment that the rent payments here would be coming from the development itself and not from taxpayers. If we never need it for taxpayers, we don't need for rent for this building. If we don't need it for the VRE project because we're successful in getting the grants, then this funding would go into the proffer fund. And putting in the proffer fund is important because that proffer fund every year, we pull from that to do our obligatory match for the MBTA funding, the offsetting tax that we would have to have issued, but the city a few years ago or a decade ago decided not to issue that and instead just pull from the proffer fund each year. Unfortunately, the proffer fund has been depleted and we have about 2 years left of payments for that. So again, the plan was with the downtown is we didn't want to start tapping into city tax dollars for those mandatory MVTA contributions. We wanted to start using this money, again, to alleviate taxpayers on an additional burden. So that's why, again, the goal is to not have to touch this money, even this money up here, because we didn't get the fourth level right. The plan was to use this money to cover the City Hall annex that would go on top of the theater across the street. That's still the goal, is to, again, reduce the rent payments we'd be doing on that annex that we wouldn't own. Like, you know, we'll eventually own this building after all the rental payments are done. For that one, we'll always be leasing it. But the hope was that by contributing funds for its construction, you negotiate then a very low rent rate for the city going forward. So that's the plan. But so tonight, we're not talking about specifically which ones we want to pull from. That's not the guidance I need from you all tonight. The guidance I need from you all is the reassurance that that yes, you know, we're going to pursue all these other funding sources to cover that $6.1 million gap for the downtown garage. But if we can't get that, then we will start tapping into these sources to cover that, to ensure that the garage continues proceeding. And just as a reminder, without that garage, this whole thing fails. The downtown is just not going to happen.
Yeah.
So it's a critical piece for the downtown.
Okay. Comments or questions? Yes, ma'am.
When will we find out about the grants?
The DRPT, we're hopeful within the next 2 to 3 months that we'll hear back. And again, anything you guys can do to engage with our state representatives to push them towards helping this critical regional project would be great. Yeah.
And if we don't get the grants, then we have to go to Plan B, which is to...
Yeah, but there's 3 sources we've identified of funding. The DRPT is the best option we have right now. We're very hopeful with that one, but then there's backup other 2 grant sources, and we'll continue to explore other options as well. We have a year still to come up with the funding before we start having to tap into this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank
that's
you.
good news.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And again, the fact that we won that $2.5 million is just a really good sign that people are looking to fund this project.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have a question?
Just quick, the payment on this building, is that due like right on the beginning of the fiscal year, or is it monthly, or is it?
I have to check. It's it is. I don't think it's monthly. I think it's bi-yearly. So I think what happens next year is we probably pay in the middle of either the middle or the end of the fiscal year. The following year we'll make 2 payments, and then the following year those 2 payments just get bigger. Yeah.
Follow up?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Comments or questions? Yes, go ahead.
What department is DRPT? What does that stand for?
Department of Rail and Public Transportation, Virginia. Is that right, Calvin? I believe so. Maybe someone can Google that right now, but I'm almost certain. I know it has rail in it.
Okay.
Yeah,
And Department
of Rail
and
and
Transportation.
Public
Okay, good. It was the PE, I didn't know.
So just because of this 1 year pushback, $8 million over the budget.
Yeah. Yeah, there's 2 components. It's the relocation,
Yeah.
but more importantly, it's the inflation. It was bad timing, right, with what's been happening with prices.
That's crazy.
So any delay, and any further delay, right?
Yeah.
So if we tell them, no, we'll do this, but we need to go out and get grants, and we wait, and they have to then reissue, price is just going to keep going up.
The
So,
construction cost?
yeah. Mhm. Even the contract oversight, that was the first thing that came back, and that one was way over by over 40%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Say all else fails, then we would have to tap into basically.
We
all-
would start tapping into a combination of these. And the good thing with ARPA now, again, we can then reevaluate ARPA if we wanted to tap into more from ARPA. ARPA's been extended 2 years in terms of what we can do. And more importantly, they're allowing transportation funding now with ARPA as well.
Yeah.
So that's why we can use this now for the garage, or at least the revenue shortage part. Like before, they were very strict. They did not want this ARPA utilized at all for transportation because they were pushing the infrastructure bill, right? After that's done, then they came back and said, okay, localities, now you have more flexibility and you can use it for transportation if you like. Yeah. That's why it's a source now. So all else fails, we can really start tapping into ARPA, which we can, we've been spending at a slow pace, and that's good because that means we still have a lot more money for emergencies like this.
Good. Follow up?
No follow-up.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
I have one more question.
Yes.
How did VRE come up with the 6.1 number? Had they already done like preliminary bids?
Oh, it already went out to bid, so that was the lowest bid back was $8 million over, or over $8 million over. But because we already had that $2.5 million grant, knowing that it was going to be over, we didn't know how much over it was going to be, But last year, you all approved the resolution to go after that $2.5 million grant. We got it. That reduced the overage to 6.1, and now we're back at it. And again, we knew it was still going to be over. Each time they kept, coming up with updated estimates, it kept going up.
And does VRE still have some ARPA funds that they have unspent that they can use or redirect?
I'm not sure if they received
I thought
direct
some of them
ARPA
are
funds
still-
for new
some of them are
builds.
still sitting on them.
Yeah, but I thought that was more for maintenance and continuing of operations with the gap. I'm not sure it was for new construction. But again, we have an agreement with them because as part of their agreement to, relocate and everything else, it was going to cause a delay. We had to agree to certain things.
And that overage was even after they value engineered it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so can't be helped.
Yeah.
Okay.
How many floors is the garage?
4 floors. Yeah, and the good news is we thought we were only going to get half a floor for the city
Yeah.
portion. We're getting a full floor.
Okay.
Because they would have just had to use fill for half of it, and they just looked at it and said, hey, it's actually the same cost of doing the fill as just building out that whole level. So we're getting a pretty total, I want to say, just under 740 spaces for that garage.
And how many spaces are in that parking lot right
Across
now?
the street?
Yeah.
600.
So at any given time, is that, I don't write the VRE, is that parking lot full?
So pre-COVID,
Yeah.
the 600 lot was beyond capacity, and people were legally parking
Right.
in the downtown area to use the VRE. That was pre-COVID. What's going to happen? When is the federal government going to have people go back to work? I don't know. I can't answer that.
Well, my question is, if we say reduce our cost by eliminating one floor,
Yeah, at this point,
How many-
they're not, you're just going to delay the project. They're going to have to go back to redesign and everything else. You'll probably save some, but by the time they come back again I think they would just stop, to be honest with you, if we stop them again.
And there's no such thing as not having too much parking.
Yeah, absolutely. And we wouldn't want to do that ourselves, because remember, it's
using
a
it for
shared
downtown
garage.
too,
I'm
right?
calling it the downtown garage right now. Before, it was always the VRE garage, but it's a downtown garage. But if it's more of the future theater users going in there, then our share of maintenance goes up compared to theirs, right? So if ridership stays low and it's just people coming to the downtown using it. But again, the only reason why the theater is considering that is because they're getting the garage right next to it. So if the garage doesn't come, the
I
theater
mean,
doesn't.
our back is against the wall. I mean, if this is the option right now, then
Yeah. But the good news again is we have the funding. It's from sources that I
Right.
didn't want to tap into. I wanted to put into other mechanisms to.
right, we had plans for some of these
Absolutely.
designated
Yeah, these are supposed to be designated for other things.
Right.
But if we need to, we have to make sacrifices. This is where I'm recommending we make the sacrifices.
Okay, follow
No
up?
further questions.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Okay. Staff recommendation is that the governing body authorize the city manager to notify the Virginia Rail Express leadership team that the city will cover the budget overage for the downtown garage so that they may proceed with awarding a construction contract to the lowest bidder and begin constructing the garage summer of 2023.
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, moving on to resolution in support of congressional earmark for stream restoration.
Beautiful. Good evening again. Okay, we're all set. This presentation is about the congressionally designated spending or earmark for a stream restoration here in Manassas Park. Begs the question, what is a stream restoration?
Ellen, can you put it up just a little bit more? Yeah.
Well, it was green. I think you need it closer to your mouth.
Oh, okay. Is that better?
Yes.
Oh,
Thank
thank
you.
you, thank you. So anyway, this begs the question, what is a stream restoration? And in a nutshell, it's an engineered channel that restores stability to a stream by mimicking nature rather than by hardening the channel with materials such as concrete. The instability is basically caused by new development because it changes the runoff characteristics of the basin. Now I got to get it down to the right arrow. Oh, there we go. So where is this particular project located? It's been designated as the bird sanctuary stream because it's actually an unnamed tributary of Russia Branch that goes right next to a bird sanctuary, and it's located in the Blooms Crossing neighborhood. I have here some photographs of the existing channel. You can see that the erosion is pretty severe. We're getting ready to lose trees in the picture on the left, and the channel is severely eroding. So why are we doing this? Besides making the stream better, we're doing this to meet our requirements for the TMDL, the total maximum daily load to the Chesapeake Bay. It's being done in 3 permit cycles through DEQ. The pollutants of concern that we are addressing are phosphorus, nitrogen, and total suspended solids. This graphic here outlines the city's obligations under the TMDL for the first permit cycle, which is ended, the second permit cycle, which will be ending, and the final third permit cycle, which will end in about 5.5 years. The column on the right totals the estimated nutrient reductions from this project. I should note here that I noticed 2 things that were incorrect in the agenda item. This project would handle 100% of the phosphorus reductions rather than the 90% cited in the agenda item. And the total amount of suspended solids per year that would be reduced is 400 tons, not 40. I beg your pardon.
400 tons.
400 tons per year. To put this in perspective, I've included some slides from when I worked in Arlington for a stream Donaldson run that went through a stream restoration to give you a sense of what's possible with this type of project. This picture here is a before stream restoration. This picture is an after stream restoration. You notice it's a nice natural looking channel. And this final one is just a really lucky photograph that we were able to get. One of my colleagues happened to be in that park right after a thunderstorm. The stream on the left is the restored section. The sediment-laden stream on the right is from an unrestored stream, and you can see where the 2 meet. It's really pretty dramatic. Project summary. Project approximate length is 1,635 linear feet. The projected cost is approximately $1.77 million. That includes a 20% city cost share of $354,000, I beg your pardon. And this is a summary of the pollutant reductions that we get from this project, approximately 100% of phosphorus, 15% of nitrogen, and it exceeds 100% of total suspended solids. So the recommendation is to approve the resolution to support the application for congressional directed spending for the bird sanctuary stream restoration project.
Just a couple add-ons too. So initially, when we were looking at Russia Branch, we were forecasting that project to cost $20 million. So the fact that this one costs $1.7 million is great. But before we celebrate there, you can see the nitrogen. We still have a lot more work to do to nitrogen. So we're not done with these projects, but the starting project is very promising in terms of savings for our residents and what the expectations are, especially if we win this congressionally directed spending. That really frees up what we were, our budget in stormwater to really tackle that nitrogen that's remaining. And secondly, we are going to have to secure, or it's recommended we secure HOA support from Blooms. Is that correct, Alan?
That's correct.
So whatever you all can do to help us out with the Blooms HOA to get their support for this project would be greatly appreciated.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Alan. I see that the local match is quite good at 20%, better than most. Actually, better than the SLAF fund, state SLAF fund, which I think is 50%, right?
That sounds correct, yes.
Okay. Comments or questions? Yes.
Will the city receive any TMDL credits for this restoration?
Yes, that's one of our primary motivations of doing this project.
How many? I'm just curious. How does that work?
Well, for phosphorus, it should be 100%, for nitrogen, 15%, and well in excess of 100% for suspended solids. This relates to the TMDL for the Chesapeake Bay.
Some of the things to consider too is when we were evaluating Rush Brand, it didn't end up being a good candidate. But one of the things we were looking at doing is a public-private partnership where they would actually do more than what's required, and to your point, get some credits to then sell to help finance the project. So we're going to keep trying to be creative with this, but this first project is a huge win for meeting our environmental requirements and doing it at a low cost. But we haven't given up on pursuing those options as well.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood your question. Thank you, Les.
He got it, and that's good. That's okay. The other question I had is about liability. We restore this creek, and it floods, or we get heavy rain, and the neighbors that are in Blooms could be impacted by this. Who bears that burden? Is it the HOA? Is it the city?
Well, let's kind of back it up a little bit. This project is going to be completely in the common area, and it's in a stream valley, so it's not going to be, floodwater shouldn't get.
There's homes near it.
Oh, yeah, but the scale on that is such that the homes aren't, they're
So
pretty
there
far
could be no
away.
flooding.
I can't say that because every property has some exposure to flooding, whether locally or from a local stream. But this project should not create a lot of what you get with unstable channels is not caused by the extreme events. The 100-year flood the change on the 100-year flood would be very nominal. Where this really comes into play is in the lower frequency floods. Is that making any sense?
Kind of.
Kind of? Okay, yeah, because.
But I guess my core question, and maybe it's a city attorney question, is liability. If the city makes this enhancement improvement in Blooms, the property belongs to Blooms, and there's flooding issues, who then takes on that liability for any problems that occurs from this project?
So without knowing the details of how we're going to get onto that property, I'm assuming, are we going to be looking for an easement from Blooms?
We'll definitely need easements.
Okay, so it's not just getting a letter of permission, but it's an actual easement.
Right.
Right.
Congressional application, it's a letter of support, but you're right, for the work, it would be the easement.
Right. So within an easement, we're responsible for maintaining that channel, depending on the easement language. But ultimately, it really depends on the easement language, to be honest with you. So if we have an obligation to do something, then yeah, there's some liability associated. If we have the right to do it, and not the obligation, which is what I would prefer, then that's on the property owner. But we can go in there, and we have the right to go in there to maintain the channel if it's not performing as desired, but not the obligation. So it really depends on the language in the easement.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you, Dean.
You're welcome.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
To kind of piggyback on that, is this already a stream?
Yes, there is flow in the stream.
Do we have flooding problem there now?
No.
Thanks.
Comment? Go ahead.
I just have a quick question. You said we get credits to MS4, correct? What percentage will that bring it down, or will assist meeting the thresholds every, I think the last one was 2021.
Just go back one slide, Alan. And open up, yeah, there we go.
That would be the credits towards the MS4.
Exactly, yeah. So we would be done with, yeah.
Strictly speaking, it's the credits towards the
Not credits,
TMDL.
but to meet the MS4.
The MS4 is the
Yes.
tool DEQ is using to move us towards meeting the TMDL.
The question is, are we on target to meet the full, I know we have to comply, or it's like a $15,000 a day fine, but are we on target to meet those demands and have?
Yeah, I mean, this is going to get us a significant way forward, and I think the deadline's 2028, and correct me if I'm wrong, Alan, we're currently utilizing UOSA credits, right,
That's correct.
to comply. We still want to build, we ultimately have to fix the nitrogen solution for a long-term solution, but I think we have time to do it.
Have we looked at, and I know a lot of the jurisdictions have asked for more of a delay in pressing it out. Has that come up recently in any with the other managers or?
Well-
I mean, as a jurisdiction standpoint, overall jurisdictions to meet the MS4 requirements.
Yes. Right now, we are using our UOSA credits to meet the requirements. But the big deadline is when we get to the end of the process. Right now, DEQ is evaluating what the different communities are doing.
So there's a possibility of stretching out 28 to 2030. Is that?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I'm asking. Thank you.
This is really an important request because it's TMDL, meeting our permit requirements. It's a huge unfunded mandate that has come down to us from the federal government. So I sincerely hope we can achieve this. And the 20% local match, that's wonderful. So any other comments or questions? Yes, go ahead.
So I mean, our match will come out from the stormwater,
Yeah, the stormwater fund.
stormwater funds. Are we not using those funds for the lateral replacement up on the west side?
The which replacements?
I guess the,
Oh, for the sewer lateral?
Yeah,
No, that's
lateral.
from the water and sewer fund. So we have 4 funds: the general fund, water and sewer fund, stormwater fund, and the solid waste fund. The stormwater fund is purely for stormwater, for for TMDL goals plus maintenance of our existing stormwater infrastructure like ponds and BMPs.
okay.
Okay, okay. Any other final comments or questions? Going once, going twice? Okay, the staff recommended motion is that the governing body adopt the resolution as presented in support of the fiscal year 2024 congressionally directed spending request for a stream restoration project in Manassas Park.
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you, Calvin.
Alan.
Alan.
I'm sorry, Alan. I'm used to Calvin presenting, that's why. Okay, moving on to item number 10, which is our second public comment time of the evening. Does anyone wish to make public comment? Seeing no one and hearing no one, we'll move on to city manager's report.
Okay, so tonight we have 2 mid-year departmental presentations, one from the fire department and one from the community development department. So I'll turn it over to Chief Soper to get us kicked off here for the fire department, and then after we're done with those, I'll take any other questions you all may have.
And I promise not to call you Chief Lugo.
I appreciate that. That's another flattering comment there. So what I have for you tonight is the mid-year report for FY23. So the first slide we have is the difference between the organizational chart from Q1 to Q2. The biggest change in that would be in the fire marshal's office. After you approved the position for the deputy fire marshal, we actually did some shuffling around inside the department. We still have that vacancy open to fill. So we're looking to do a hiring process that's currently going on now. Once we hire someone, we'll do a promotion, and then we'll fill the EMS supervisor position again. So our current staffing, and this has changed now after tonight, so we're budgeted for 39 FTEs, 29 sworn and 1 civilian. Budgeted personnel covered 1 engine, 1 ambulance, and the battalion chief. Of course, that's going to change after tonight again. Thank you very much. And the fire marshal's office now consists of 2 personnel as of January 16th of 2022. So having that deputy fire marshal on staff will result in some better inspection numbers. So some highlights for FY23 at the mid-year. We continually to see call volume steadily increase. That's throughout the National Capital Region. Everybody's seeing that. Training and operation plan for the ladder truck, that was implemented, that's been completed. Staff's well-trained, ready to roll. The fire department open house was held in October. Very well attended by the community. That seems to be a trend with that event. We had our ISO inspection review prepared. We were ready to roll. That inspection was actually done in Q3, which we'll present that at our next presentation. At the time, when I put this together, the SAFER grant was still pending. We know that's no longer pending. We did receive back in the last quarter that the AFG grant was denied for our radio equipment. We did resubmit that February the 9th of this year. And staff handled multiple community events throughout the second quarter, a lot of the holiday seasons. Staff also teamed up with our regional partners to assist with the Arlington National Cemetery Wreaths Across America, which is really important to us, especially when our city is led by veterans over there. That's very much thank you. Let me go back one. So if we drop down to the stats, just to highlight real quick, and then we'll break them down real quick, a little deeper. The Fire Marshal's Office saw 0 public education events during the quarter, 41 fire inspections, 13 fire investigations, or different types of investigations, and no career development programs at the time. The Operations Division saw the on-scene time from time of dispatch to on-scene stay around 4 minutes, which is really good. That's pretty much below the national standard. For that quarter, our busiest day was Friday, and peak times run between 6 p.m. and midnight. Staff saw up to 1,771 calls broken down through EMS's primary is 1113, fire was primary 658. Total unit responses, that's everything going across the board, 2789. The medic breakdown was 1340. The engine was 1257, and the battalion chief was 186, and the fire marshal got called at 6 times. So comparing FY22 to 23, the biggest number to look at is the purple, where we saw where the emergency responses kind of jumped up by 300-400 calls there. Of course, the one thing that didn't change from year to year is the average response time and the average on-scene time basically stays the same. Staff really does a really good job getting out the door, getting on scene pretty quick. One thing we did hear historically was complaints of traffic being backed up at the red light. So if anybody ever gets a complaint about the red light at the front of the fire station, it's a 45-second red light. It changes back to green after 45 seconds, just so that we're understanding that. The box assignments, that's how we break the city down in thirds for us to kind of run our data. The biggest change there we saw in FY22 to FY23 is the orange block, which is the west end of the city. When the Northern Virginia region decided to go to this AVL dispatch, automatic vehicle locators, where the closest unit goes, we do see the Yorkshire area coming over to the community center area a little more, because if the goal is to get the quickest unit there in the promptest time. And the training hours and the activity hours just make up the rest of the call volume that the staff's doing. This is just a breakdown of the National Fire Incident Reporting System, how we derived at that 1771 number. This is how they all break down, different categories. Some training events here, different training events we've done. We did some training with the schools on fire extinguisher props. We've used the different facilities for hose poles up ladders. You see the ladder truck training there, and different training. So with the fire marshal's office, we see the inspections did go down from 22 to 23. Again, with the deputy fire marshal being on board, that's going to go up. I do have the current fire marshal doing a lot of the admin work, helping with the budget, helping with a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff, so he's really tied down with that. So that's been helpful to get the deputy fire marshal on board. Incident investigations are broken down amongst internal investigations, external fires, and 4 years, and those numbers kind of stayed the same. And the only thing that really dropped in there was from FY22 to 23 was the plans reviews. Just a couple of the pictures from our special events. Our top top picture is from the open house. The one right next to it is the Santa run throughout the city. Then we go to the Trick or Trunk. Then we have our Toys for Tot campaign we do with the Marine Corps. The middle picture in the bottom is we sent staff to the National Fallen Firefighters Memorial Remembrance Day up in Emmitsburg, Maryland, which is a great event. And the last picture is the picture that the staff caught the day they arrived at Arlington National Cemetery when the sun came up that morning, which was pretty awesome picture. Some Q2 performance and annual goals. Our performance goals is we're going to track all emergency responses for data, turnout times, travel time, on-scene time. Our goal is always to be 90% of the time within 7 minutes. Currently, we're somewhere around 4 minutes, so we're really beating our goal pretty well. We're going to make sure we track all the emergency data for different hotspots in the city. Track the time, the dates, all that stuff, so that we can truly determine where our assets are needed the most. Some annual goals we do just to make sure that we're complying with OSHA and all that is we do annual fire pumps, annual ladder testing, hose testing. We test our SCBA for personnel. Air compressors tested every year. All personnel get fit for duty physicals every year, and that's been done. And then make sure we maintain with our ISO guidance for training. And with that, that is it.
Thank you, Chief. Questions, comments?
I have a question. Your 311, you had 98 of those. Does that include like overdose? Would that be under that category? Under NIFRs? Medical assist EMS crew, is that?
So the medical assist would be more when the fire truck comes to assist the ambulance with, hey, we need help getting this individual down the steps, or maybe our ambulance is not in the city and we have to get Prince William County come over or Manassas to come over. We get the fire crews to come out, who most of the time our fire crews have a paramedic on it anyway. So it's more of just an assistance call than it is truly an overdose.
Where would your overdoses be on it here? Is that?
They're going to be mostly in that 321 category. That's where most of the EMS calls are going to fall in.
Would you say that's increased, or have you, I don't know, there's no metrics, or, I've tried to identify metrics on this in this area.
Yeah.
Specifically, have you seen an increase, or?
I think for us, it's been kind of staying steady throughout the city. For the police department, they may have seen an increase. I don't know their numbers. I did get an email this week asking staff from Chief Lugo that they want to start tracking those numbers to turn in Northern Virginia. So probably next month and the month after, we'll have a better tracking numbers for that. I can get those numbers to you through Mr. Palco, but I don't have a great idea whether.
I was just generally speaking,
Yeah.
if you saw an increase in it.
I think for us, it's been steady the same. It's not a high number within the city limits.
Okay.
We probably see more when we exit the city than we do within the city.
All right, thank you.
Questions, comments? Councilmember Javed, do you have a?
No.
Oh, okay. No questions or comments. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Much appreciated. Now it's Calvin. Why do I have the feeling I'm not going to live that down?
We'll forget by next week.
Good evening, Mayor Rischel, Vice Mayor Mensing, members of council, residents, staff, and guests. I'm Calvin Odell, the Director of Community Development, here to present my Q2 FY23 review. Infrastructure project highlights. Now, just a reminder, we are a couple months past the end of Q2, so these projects have moved on substantially since this was put together, but this is where we were at the end of Q2. Upper Kent reconstruction, the utility work did begin in December. Connor Drive extension, we evaluated the potential design changes to keep the project on schedule, and as you know, that project is now broken ground. It is underway. The Railroad Drive culverts, I'm happy to say that those are nearly complete with their rehab, but Back then, we were just getting into the debris removal and preparation to start the actual spray lining and complete rehabilitation. The Manassas Drive at Russia Branch culvert, the bid documents were at 100%, and that did go out to advertisement in January, and those bids will be coming back next week. Street resurfacing, we did not get the street resurfacing on our vendor schedule before winter began and the plants closed, so that work is slated to begin in early spring. The AMI, Smart Meter Improvements Project, we had all of our kickoff meetings, got those out of the way in Q2, and we had field evaluations that were still ongoing in Q2. Materials were ordered because there was substantial lead time on a lot of the meters and materials. And then Phase 6 water system improvements. The design engineer, if you remember, we completed the design of this project some time ago, but because of the status of the Water Sewer Enterprise Fund, we weren't able to necessarily jump in and complete this project right away. So that project is being re-reviewed by the design engineer to look at for utility changes, anything that might impact their original drawing, so that we can put that out to bid this spring. Infrastructure operations highlights. Our front-end loader and our dump truck, or one of our big dump trucks, were both taken out of service in Q2. The loader was having hydraulic issues and rust issues that caused our mechanic to have concerns with it going overhead to load salt into the backs of dump trucks, so that was taken out of service. And one of our large dump trucks was taken out of service because of the status of the chassis. Leak detection work to track down non-surfacing breaks was a big issue for us. We knew we had some major breaks, but no water was coming to the surface, no water was being reported anywhere, but we were noticing on our meter readings at our vaults that we were consuming a lot more water than normal. We were able to track down several major large breaks and get those repaired. Sign projects, we had several large sign projects going on throughout the city, speed zones and things like that. Those projects were wrapping up in Q2. A site inspection load remained high because we still have the development going on in City Center, and we also had Upper Kent coming online, which of course requires our site inspector as well, and we also added 4 new site permits to the mix in Q2. We are monitoring a sinkhole near Russia Branch. I'm sure everyone's seen some activity where Russia Branch goes underneath of Manassas Drive. We had reduced to 1 lane because there was a sinkhole forming there. Our crews have since actually removed the asphalt, done some fill and some replacement material, and we get those bids back next week, so we're hopeful that that rehabilitation will start soon. Water meter issues and coordination. This was a We've had, with the AMI project, we explained that we're beyond 15 years since we had a comprehensive meter replacement project. The meters that are out there are aging, the registers are aging, we're starting to lose a lot of signal, radio signal, we're having to go and hand read a lot more meters, and we're finding a lot more registers that are broken. The meters themselves are not broken, but the registers are broken, so you can't get a reading until you replace the register. We've had a lot of those issues going on. It's taken a lot of water sewer staff time out there trying to keep meters functional. So with the AMI project and a comprehensive citywide meter replacement, those issues will go away. General services highlights. We continued coordination with Enterprise on our fleet program. We had a first round of interviews for a general services manager position. The procurement process for the City Hall cleaning contract wrapped up, and we've since selected a vendor for that. City Hall punch list and turnover continue to be a big issue through Q1 and Q2 because it's a brand new building and we're not going to accept it until it's right. So it's always an ongoing process. And then preparing bid documents for the PD leak repairs. We're at about 95, 96% on those drawings, getting ready to put that out. But in Q2, we were just starting to get those specifications and plans put together for that project. and ongoing HVAC issues at the fire department. I wish I could say that we're 100% through those, but we have made big strides since then. But back in Q2, this was a major issue, trying to get Carrier, Johnson Controls, the various vendors and the contractor that installed the new system, coordinate them all, get them together in the same place to evaluate what was going on, where rooms weren't quite responding to the thermostats the way they should. Facilities activity, labor hours by category. Altogether, we expended 1,747 documented labor hours in our Asset Essential systems. That was over 327 documented work orders. The major portion of that was cleaning. 45% of that was cleaning. Also, we talked about the issue in Q2. We were still reporting a lot of the contractor supervision as administrative. So it's not really allocated to a specific facility, and it's kind of hard to track, what project specifically that contractor supervision belong to. So we're refining the way we record that in Asset Essentials so that we can bring down this administrative slice of the pie and sort of show you more specifically if that's HVAC work, plumbing work, electrical work, things like that. But as far as the small stuff, what we're documenting right now, HVAC, of course, is probably the bigger issue we're dealing with at all the buildings. Facilities activity by location. You can see that we spent a lot of time at City Hall. It's not surprising, first year of a new building. Your facilities manager has spent a lot of time here responding to people's initial complaints about space temperature and looking at little things, trying to figure out how everything works and getting the contractor to respond to punch list items. So hopefully that will tone down. Also a lot of time at Blooms Park because we still have cleaning there, but we also have several mechanical systems there. So it's not just one mechanical system, it's several systems. And then social services, this number, I tried to investigate. We did spend a lot of time there, but I don't think it was, there's cleaning hours here. I don't think we spent a lot of repair time. Hope we didn't because that's a leased building, so that's someone else's responsibility. But I tried to figure out why these numbers look the way they do. I couldn't find an exact answer to that question. Fleet activity, 314 total work orders for 1,581 total labor hours. 55% of that was administrative. In this case, the administration is really onboarding the enterprise fleet program. The mechanic's spending a lot of time working, with onboarding these vehicles, dealing with enterprise, helping, the assistant city manager out with these issues. So that really is not a way we report it. That's just Tommy sitting at his desk working with enterprise fleet or sitting here at City Hall working with Keith on trying to get this program working. And then you can see the slices of the pie down below, and then the all others category, those are actually itemized in Asset Essentials, but for the purposes of this exercise, I can't have 100 pie slices, so I lumped them all together into all others. Fleet activity labor hours by department. This pie here usually doesn't change. I usually show them side by side, quarter to quarter, but just really shows this never really changes that much. We spend a lot of time on the police department fleet. It is the largest portion of our fleet. And then we also have quite a few public works trucks. This is especially high in Q2 when we're getting ready for winter and we're putting all the plows and spreaders back on the vehicles. So the public works fleet gets a lot of extra attention in Q2 as we're getting them ready for winter. And then the fire department was 11% of our fleet activity. Development services highlights. The VRE garage site plan and construction plan were submitted and reviewed. The Palisades bond release finally occurred. People might have noticed they came out and mowed a couple different times. They did some work on the retaining walls there. They did some work on the stairs there to bring those into compliance on the pervious path. So they were finally able to get off bond. Capitol Park has submitted a request for bond release. We're still working on some issues there so that we can release their bond. We As I mentioned earlier, we issued 4 brand-new development permits in Q2. We also held 4 pre-construction meetings in Q2. The live-work unit waiver request for our 10 apartments was presented to the body and approved. And then Phase 4 downtown rezoning review and comments, that is still ongoing, but we have been providing comment and response to that for quite some time. Q2 was another round of submission and comment. And then our payment portal for permits finally went live. We had some issues. We thought it was live a couple different times, but people still weren't able to access it. That payment portal has been working fairly well. We're still ironing out some issues, not with the portal itself, but with SmartGov and how people access that portal, trying to get more and more payments available for people to make other than just straight permit payments. But it's working out quite well. I think people are enjoying the ability to pay online and finally do business with our department online. As far as statistics, here I used the terms previous quarter that would reflect Q1, and then recent quarter would be Q2. Inspections picked way back up from Q1. They picked back up. I was nervous in Q1. It was kind of all signs, oh no. Why is inspections slowing? Why are permits slowing? But Q2 saw a big burst in permits and inspections activity again. So inspections jumped up, as well as number of permits issued went up, and our revenues went down, which just tells me that there was a lot of permit activity on smaller jobs, not a lot of permit activity on bigger jobs. But still, even smaller jobs is good. That means that people are still spending on their smaller home improvements. Code enforcement update, Q1 FY23, we actually had 209 closed cases. It was a total of 211 cases, so only 2 cases remained open from Q1. That's a 99.05% closure rate on code enforcement cases. And in Q2, we actually had 523 total cases. A lot of that is tied to the new the solid waste ordinance and the way we're addressing trash on Wednesdays and Thursdays. But we closed 522 of those cases. Only had 3 cases remaining opened for the year in FY20 in Q2. That's a 99.81% closure rate for the cases in Q2. Code enforcement highlights. We began issuing citations for solid waste ordinance violations. I don't think that was a popular decision to some citizens, to some residents out there, but it was certainly a goal that we were happy that we finally accomplished. We went fully mobile with our notice of violation and citation printing. That was very exciting. The code enforcement inspectors actually have mobile printers in their vehicles. They take their tablets in the vehicles and they print citations and notice of violations directly from their vehicles. They don't have to run back to the office and spend office time. It's a very nice system. We have had some concerns and issues with the printers, but we've actually squared those away and they're both working very well again. So hopeful that we've actually got a cost-effective printer solution. And we integrated into Asset Essentials, the code enforcement staff did. So SmartGov is our permitting side of things. Asset Essentials is more of our public works, work order administration side of things. But the code enforcement inspectors now are logged into Asset Essentials so that they can submit requests for violation mitigation directly to Public Works. So in real time, the minute they ask Public Works to do something, that request is going to a supervisor on their cell phone. That supervisor can then send people to do the job. So a lot of the trash issues people never have to deal with over the weekend, because by the time we get to Friday, Public Works has already cleaned up the mess, and then city's clean for the weekend. Code enforcement statistics. This is showing Q1 versus Q2. As you see, most of the violations stayed or kind of went down, and that's not to be expected. Grass just stops growing sometime in Q2, so we're not going to have a lot of grass cases in Q2. Improper domestic storage is not going to change. That's always going to be a steady violation. People are still going to park their cars in the yards, but you are going to see some of the outdoor type violations decline. The big takeaway from this slide is that massive jump on the trash and garbage cases, 553% increase. That's really just the program getting up and running. You know, we didn't have a solid waste ordinance that allowed us to cite and do violations until the start of the fiscal year, and we gave the residents plenty of time to get used to this, did lots of public information and outreach. By the time this program fully ramped up, 500 and some % spike in cases. So that's why we're going to continue to see a lot of trash and garbage cases until residents respond by following the rules and we can dial back the enforcement. But altogether, 211 Q1 cases, 523 Q2 cases, and that difference is probably almost 100% trash and garbage cases.
One outlier, the inoperable vehicle, you see went down to 0, but that's because we were changing the method of enforcement. So we're now moving to a new model, so expect those numbers to rise, where we'll be able to issue a notice of violation, and then 30 days after, if they haven't fixed it, then a 10-day notice of towing. So that's going to be where we'll go to the magistrate and get an order for towing after those 10 days. So that's going to be the new process we adopt for inoperable vehicles. It's really, that's been one of the biggest problems, along with cars and parked in yards and the trash and garbage. Now with the spring coming, grass and weeds will likely jump up as well, but car and yards and inoperable vehicles seem to be the other major issue, along with trash, garbage, and in the future, grass and weeds.
Any questions?
Comments or questions?
Good job on the code enforcement.
Anything?
Go ahead. So how many inspectors do we have currently right now? We still have one, or?
So we have code enforcement inspector, and then we have code enforcement inspector that's half of their duty. The other half of their duty is a planner 1. So that we actually have, I guess you would say, 1.5 FTEs dedicated to code enforcement.
We weren't able to secure that second position full-time?
Yeah, that was a position. A pure code. Remember, you guys budgeted for kind of. You budgeted a lot of hours for part-time code enforcement. We weren't able to secure that, but what we were able to recruit was kind of enticing, someone who's interested in city planning as well to kind of get in and help out. And a big chunk of her effort has been in the code enforcement, especially when the trash and garbage took off.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
As well, yeah.
Burden on one person.
Yeah.
Oh, no, these two code enforcement personnel spend pretty much all Wednesday and Thursday right now dealing with trash and garbage, the solid waste ordinance violations. But it's been a very educational experience on both sides.
Yeah.
And that's, I couldn't be more proud of them. They're out there. They're not making the public mad. They're really educating the public, talking to the public. Mm-hmm. We spend as much time handing out warnings and flyers as we do violations and citations.
Right.
It's really a last resort if we're issuing a citation.
Right.
And
I think it's got to be second or third violation for a citation.
no, but you've already received a violation, notice of violation posted to your door, and you've had 24 hours to correct that by the time you get a citation.
Yeah. My other question was, the slide you said it was closed cases, meaning these people rectified their problems?
Correct. The case is considered closed in our system.
Now,
We started the case, we opened the case, we either left a door hanger, made personal contact, or send a notice of violation. Whatever the efforts were on behalf of the code enforcement inspector to notify the person, that case has now been rectified. They drive back, they reinspect the property, the
Okay.
violation
So
no
it wasn't
longer
court
exists.
cases? I was
No.
assuming it was court
No.
cases closed.
No.
Okay. No question, thank you.
Then?
I just have one question. I'm sorry.
No.
Yeah. Does code enforcement work on the weekends? And then the second question is, have you seen an increase in complaints going to the website from residents?
We get quite a few. I wouldn't say we've seen an increase. We're kind of expecting one now. because there was a lot of activity this past week where people were constantly posting out. So more people probably are aware of that email address, and now we're going to probably get a lot more complaints. I still don't think a lot of people are using the SmartGov Citizen Portal. A lot of people are using the Asset Essentials Citizen Portal to reach Public Works about, down signs, potholes, things like that. We don't see nearly that level of activity in the SmartGov Resident Portal, but I haven't seen a massive spike in the actual requests coming through the city website. I think people are just as happy to call us on the phone, but it's the weekend and evening question. Yes, every single week there is weekend presence or evening presence. So usually Sundays we'll have an officer out on the streets. The evening, that's up to them. I kind of let them manage their own schedule whenever it works for them. But it's been a lot of cars in the yards.
All right. Thank you.
I can tell you the results of that. I think we've presented something like that. If not, we really should, because, just like people say, they wanted code enforcement out there in the evenings and the weekends to see all these cars in the yards, and it's true. But it's really, when you're out there on the weekend, you're out there, and that's the most glaring and easy violation to stumble across, is someone's parking in their front yard.
And that's the most challenging one to deal with, because it's a zoning violation. Is that right, Calvin? The car in yard. So we issue the zoning violation. They move the car. The violation's gone. And then, they do it again, and now it's a new. So it's a really tough one to crack. And we've been thinking about what can be done. We talked about other changes to the code, but it's very limited what can be done for that one. So if someone doesn't move their car, we can then take them to court eventually. But then by the time we show up to court, they move the car, it's no longer a violation. The judge isn't going to do anything.
Thank you.
It's really challenging.
Any other follow-up?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Calvin, thank you very much. A lot of good information.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Next, we have closed session. City Attorney, would you like to read us into closed session?
Thank you.
I recommend the governing body go into closed meeting to discuss and consider the sale of city-owned real property to a prospective business where no previous announcement has been made of the business's interest in locating in the city, and where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position and negotiating strategy of the city, and to consult with the city attorney regarding the same pursuant to paragraphs 3, 5, and 8 of subsection 2.2-3711A of the Code of Virginia, and to discuss a prospective business where no previous announcement has been made of the business's interest in locating in the city pursuant to paragraph 5 of subsection 2.2-3711A of the Code of Virginia.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. We're in closed session. We'll take a 5-minute comfort break.